You know, there are moments in life when you feel like you're on the edge, like you're just about to break through, but you can't see it yet. You're waiting, you're praying, you're trusting. And it feels like you're stuck in the middle of the process, like the promise is too far away. But I want you to hear me today. When God is about to give you something big, something beyond your wildest imagination, you're going to start seeing it in ways you didn't expect. It's going to show up in your circumstances, in your thoughts, in your challenges. And if you're not paying attention, you might miss it. But here's the truth. Sometimes what feels like a setback is really just God's way of positioning you for the next level of greatness. So before you see the blessing, you need to be prepared for what comes before the breakthrough. Can I tell you something? When God is about to give you something big, you'll see it first in your heart, in your spirit, in your mindset. That's where the miracle starts. There are moments in life when we're waiting for a breakthrough, when we're praying for that one thing that will change everything. Maybe it's the job opportunity you've been dreaming about, or the relationship that you know has the potential to be everything you've hoped for. Maybe it's financial stability, a new direction in your life, or simply peace of mind after years of struggle. Whatever it is, you can feel that it's coming. You've been holding on to that promise. You've been standing firm in your faith, but there's something that's hard to shake. You wonder, why is this taking so long? Why am I still in this waiting period? Why am I still in this place of preparation? The truth is, before God gives you something big, before he blesses you with the breakthrough you've been praying for, he will first prepare you for it. It's in the preparation where we often feel frustrated, lost, or overlooked. But it's actually in that time when God is doing something significant. You see, God doesn't just give blessings without first preparing us to handle them. He knows that our capacity to carry the weight of a blessing is determined by how much we've been shaped during the process. This process is essential. Think about it. If you're looking for a large house, but you don't have the maturity or the financial stability to maintain it, God won't just give it to you because you want it. He loves you too much to give you something that could end up being a burden. If you're asking God to bless you with success, but you haven't yet developed the emotional or spiritual strength to handle the pressures that come with it, the blessing could end up overwhelming you. It's not that God doesn't want to bless you, he wants to, more than you can imagine. But he knows that he must first shape you, mold you, and prepare you to be the person who can truly receive and steward that blessing. In the Bible, we see this all the time. Think of the story of David. He was anointed as king when he was just a young shepherd out in the fields. He had no idea what that calling would ultimately require of him. The anointing was there, the promise was clear, but the journey to the throne was long. And it was full of challenges that could have easily discouraged him. Before he could sit on the throne, David had to go through many years of preparation, years of battling lions, bears, and even giants. He had to learn to trust God in ways that most of us can't even imagine. David's time in the wilderness wasn't a punishment. It was preparation. Those years of hardship were the very experiences that built his character, his faith, and his ability to lead. The man who would become king had to learn how to fight his own battles first. He had to build the resilience, courage, and humility needed to lead God's people. If David had been crowned king the moment he was anointed, without the preparation he went through, he wouldn't have had the strength or wisdom to carry the weight of that title. And we see the same principle at work in the lives of others in Scripture. Moses, for example, was called by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. But before he could do that, he had to spend 40 years in the desert. Those 40 years weren't a waste of time. They weren't a detour from the plan. They were essential to Moses becoming the leader God intended him to be. If Moses had not spent that time in the desert, he wouldn't have had the patience, the humility, or the trust in God that was required to lead an entire nation through the wilderness. God doesn't just give you a blessing without a purpose. He doesn't bless you just to make your life easier. Every blessing comes with a responsibility. It comes with a mission. It comes with the potential to not only change your life, but to impact the lives of those around you. And if you're not prepared for that, the blessing could ultimately lose its power. That's why God takes time to shape you, refine you, and prepare you. He knows that the blessing he's about to give you requires a level of maturity, understanding, and spiritual depth that only comes through the process of preparation. Now, I know that preparation doesn't always feel good. In fact, there are times when it feels like the preparation is harder than the actual blessing. When you're in the waiting room of life, it can feel like you're stuck in limbo, like you're doing all the right things, praying all the right prayers, and yet nothing seems to be happening. But let me remind you that preparation is not a passive process. It's an active one. It requires you to be engaged with God, to trust His timing, to remain faithful even when you don't see the fruit immediately. Preparation means you're being stretched beyond your comfort zone, pushed to develop qualities that you developed even to know you had. This is where many people fall off the path. They get tired of waiting. They get frustrated with the process and begin to doubt whether they're ever going to see the blessing they were promised. But I want to encourage you today, don't give up in the preparation phase. Don't give up just because you don't see the results immediately. Trust that God is doing something inside of you that is far more important than anything on the outside. He is developing your character, your perseverance, and your faith. He's building a foundation that can withstand the weight of the blessing that is coming. When we look at Jesus, we see a perfect example of this principle. Jesus was born with a destiny to save the world, to change the course of history. But before he began his ministry, he spent 30 years in relative obscurity. For 30 years, he worked as a carpenter in a small town. He didn't perform miracles. He didn't preach to thousands. He didn't heal the sick. He simply lived his life, growing in wisdom and favor with God and man. But during those 30 years, he was being prepared. God was shaping him, teaching him, preparing him for the monumental task that lay ahead. And when the time came for Jesus to step into his ministry, everything he had gone through, every moment of waiting, every moment of quiet obedience was part of the preparation. Jesus didn't step into his calling prematurely. He waited for the right time, and when that time came, he was fully equipped to handle the weight of the calling. He was ready to face the challenges, the opposition, and the ultimate sacrifice that his mission required. This is the kind of preparation that God uses to shape us. It's not always glamorous. It's not always obvious, but it's always purposeful. God uses every season of your life, every victory, every setback, every moment of waiting to prepare you for the next level. He knows what you need, and he knows what you can handle. If you feel like you're in a place of preparation right now, take heart. God is not wasting your time. He is shaping you. He is molding you. He is getting you ready for something bigger, something greater, something that you could never imagine on your own. And when you look back on this season, you'll realize that the preparation was just as important as the blessing itself. Because the person you are becoming through this process is the person who will be able to carry the blessing when it comes. The person you are becoming through this preparation is the one who will be able to handle the responsibility, the weight, and the impact of what God is about to give you. So I want to encourage you today, keep going, keep trusting, keep waiting. You might not see it now, but God is preparing you for something big. Don't give up. Don't lose heart. The best is yet to come. And when it does, you'll know that every moment of preparation was worth it. Because when God is about to give you something big, he will first prepare you. And that preparation will be the foundation for everything that comes next. We all go through times in life when it feels like everything is falling apart. The weight of the world seems to be pressing down on you. And no matter how hard you try, you can't seem to shake the struggles you're facing. It's easy in these moments to question whether you're on the right path or if things are ever going to get better. But what if I told you that your struggles aren't just random hardships? What if I told you that they are actually a crucial part of your setup for what's coming next? What if your struggles, your setbacks, and your challenges are the very things that are positioning you for a breakthrough? In life, it's so tempting to think that if we're struggling, it means we're failing. If things aren't going smoothly, it must mean we're doing something wrong. We look at others who seem to have it all together. We wonder why we're stuck in the midst of our own battles. But I want to challenge you today to change the way you see your struggles. What if your struggle is actually your setup for your next level? What if it's not a sign of failure, but a sign that God is preparing you for something bigger than you can imagine? The Bible is full of stories of people who went through incredible struggles only to later realize that their battles were part of the setup for the blessings and callings that God had for them. Take Joseph, for example. Joseph's story is one that's filled with betrayal, rejection, and hardship. He was sold into slavery by his own brothers, thrown into prison on false charges, and left to rot in an Egyptian dungeon for years. From the outside, it seemed like Joseph's life was a string of failures. But what we know, looking back on his story, is that all of those struggles were not just random acts of cruelty or misfortune. They were setting Joseph up for his ultimate promotion. Joseph's struggles in the pit and in prison were shaping his character, building his resilience, and preparing him for the moment when he would rise to power in Egypt. and save his family and an entire nation from famine. Had Joseph not gone through the pit, had he not been betrayed by those closest to him, he wouldn't have had the wisdom, humility, and strength required to handle the responsibility of his future position. The struggles he faced were the very things that made him who he needed to be in order to step into the purpose that God had for his life. Now, you might be thinking, that's a nice story, but my struggles are nothing like Joseph's. You're right. Your struggles might look different. They might not involve betrayal by your family or being thrown into a literal prison. But here's the truth. No matter what your struggles look like, they are not a sign of your defeat. They are part of your setup. The challenges you're facing right now are shaping you for something greater. You may not see it in the moment, but one day you will look back and realize that the very things that seem like obstacles were actually stepping stones that position you for your breakthrough. Consider the story of David again. Before he became king, David spent years running for his life from King Saul, who was consumed by jealousy and fear. David was forced to live in caves, to hide in the wilderness, to face constant danger, and to experience loneliness and rejection. It seemed like everything he had been promised, everything that God had spoken over his life, was slipping further and further away. But it was in those years of struggle that David was prepared to lead. It was in the wilderness that he learned how to fight, how to rely on God, and how to be a man of integrity, even when no one was watching. Those struggles weren't in vain. They were part of his preparation for the throne. Sometimes we want to rush through struggles. We pray for God to take them away, and we wonder why things aren't getting better faster. But what we don't always understand is that our struggles are working for us, not against us. They are refining us, teaching us lessons we couldn't learn any other way, and developing qualities in us that we'll need when we step into the next season of our lives. Without the pressure, there would be no progress. Without the fire, there would be no purification. Without the struggle, there would be no growth. Think about a piece of coal. Before it can become a diamond, it has to undergo an incredible amount of pressure. The process is long, intense, and painful, but it's the pressure that transforms the coal into something precious. In the same way, your struggles are applying pressure to your life. They are shaping you, molding you, and making you into something beautiful. The pressure might not feel good in the moment, but it's working behind the scenes to create something in you that will shine in ways you can't yet see. In the same way, there are people who have gone through incredible hardships but have come out stronger on the other side. Maybe you've heard the stories of people who faced devastating loss, illness, or failure, only to rise again with a testimony of faith, resilience, and victory. Their struggles didn't define them as victims. Their struggles were the very thing that empowered them to overcome, to step into their destiny, and to make an impact in the world. But here's the thing. Your struggle doesn't define you either. Your struggle is simply the setup. It's not the final destination. It's not the end of the story. It's the middle where the transformation happens. It's where you are becoming the person you need to be in order to handle the greatness that God has in store for you. And when you get to the other side of that struggle, you will be able to look back and see how far you've come. You'll be able to see how every trial, every setback, and every challenge was part of the setup that brought you to your purpose. One of the biggest lies that the enemy tries to convince us of is that our struggles are a sign that we're off track. He wants us to think that if things are hard, then we must be doing something wrong. But that's simply not true. Struggles are part of the journey. Struggles are what build our character, deepen our faith, and prepare us for the blessing that's coming. God is not punishing you for your struggles. He is using them to set you up for your breakthrough. And here's something else to remember. You are not alone in your struggles. God is with you every step of the way. He doesn't leave you when things get tough. In fact, it's often in the midst of our struggles that God is closest to us, teaching us, guiding us, and strengthening us for what lies ahead. If you're facing a difficult season, know that God is using it to position you for something greater. He's using your struggles to prepare you for the success, the breakthrough, and the blessing that is coming your way. So, instead of viewing your struggles as obstacles, start seeing them as opportunities. They are opportunities for growth, for learning, and for transformation. They are the setup for what God is about to do in your life. When you look at your struggles through this lens, they no longer seem as overwhelming. They no longer seem like signs of defeat. They become part of the process that will lead to your victory. And remember, this is not a one-time thing. Life will continue to bring struggles, challenges, and obstacles. But every time you face a new struggle, you will have the strength, the wisdom, and the resilience to overcome it. Why? Because your struggles are part of your setup. They are shaping you into the person God has called you to be. And with every struggle you overcome, you are one step closer to the breakthrough that God has promised you. Keep going, keep fighting, keep believing. Your struggles are working for you. They are positioning you for the victory that is coming. When we talk about faith, we often think about it in terms of believing in something we can't yet see. We think of faith as trusting God even when our circumstances don't line up with the promises He has given us. Faith requires a deep, unwavering belief in the things that are unseen, and sometimes that means believing in something before we can actually see any evidence of it. But here's the thing, faith is not just about waiting around for something to appear out of nowhere. True faith requires vision. It requires seeing what is not yet visible, believing in what is not yet manifest. There's a reason why God so often speaks about vision in the Bible when it comes to faith. Vision is the lens through which faith operates. Before the manifestation of the promises of God, you need to have a vision of what those promises look like. You need to be able to see with the eyes of faith, to envision the outcome of your trust and obedience. Without this vision, it's easy to lose heart, to grow weary, and to give up before you see the breakthrough. Vision is crucial because it's what keeps you going when everything around you says to quit. Without vision, faith becomes stagnant. Without vision, faith lacks direction. Without vision, faith can easily be reduced to mere wishful thinking. And we all know that wishful thinking doesn't have the power to bring about change. But vision has the power to propel you forward. It gives you something to press towards, something to work for, something to hold on to even when everything around you is falling apart. Look at the life of Abraham. God promised Abraham that he would become the father of many nations, but at the time he was an old man with no children. On top of that, his wife Sarah was barren. When God first gave Abraham this promise, it seemed utterly impossible. Everything in Abraham's reality pointed to the fact that this promise could never come true. But God didn't just ask Abraham to have faith, He gave him a vision. He showed Abraham the stars in the sky, saying, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. So shall your offspring be." Genesis 15:5. God didn't just tell Abraham to trust in the promise. He painted a picture of what the promise would look like when it was fulfilled. He gave Abraham a vision of what could be, even though it didn't yet exist in the natural world. Abraham's faith wasn't just about blind trust. It was about seeing with the eyes of faith what was still unseen. Abraham had to believe in the promise that God had made, but that belief was anchored in a vision. Without the vision of the stars, how could Abraham have truly believed that God could make him the father of a great nation? The vision was the fuel for his faith. It gave him something to hold on to, something to remind him that the promise was real, even when the reality around him said otherwise. You might be in a season right now where you're holding on to a promise from God, but it feels like that promise is nowhere near coming to pass. Maybe you're trusting God for healing, but your body is still in pain. Maybe you're believing for financial breakthrough, but you're still struggling to make ends meet. Maybe you've been praying for a relationship to be restored, but it feels like the situation is only getting worse. It's easy in those moments to lose hope. It's easy to question if God is really going to do what He promised. But this is where vision becomes so important. Faith requires you to see beyond your current circumstances. It requires you to look past the lack, the struggles, the setbacks, and see what God has promised. Vision helps you to see what God sees, not just what's in front of you. And when you have that vision, it changes how you approach your situation. You don't just see the problem anymore, you see the solution. You don't just see the storm, you see the peace that is coming. You don't just see the sickness, you see the healing that God has already provided. Vision transforms your perspective. It shifts your focus from the present limitations to the future possibilities. Think about the story of Moses. God called Moses to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. But Moses didn't have the capacity to believe that this was even possible at first. When God spoke to Moses from the burning bush, Moses had a hard time seeing himself as the deliverer of his people. He saw his own limitations. He saw his own past mistakes. He saw his own inadequacies. But God gave Moses a vision of a people freed from slavery, a vision of a land flowing with milk and honey. God showed Moses what would happen if he obeyed. He didn't just tell Moses to have faith, He gave him a glimpse of the future. And it was that vision that helped Moses to push past his fears, doubts, and insecurities and to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Vision also helps to sustain faith over the long haul. Sometimes the promises of God take time to manifest, and during that time, it's easy to get discouraged. Maybe you've been praying for years for something, and you're starting to wonder if it's ever going to happen. Maybe you've seen small glimpses of God's faithfulness, but the full manifestation of his promise still feels distant. In these moments, vision is what keeps you anchored. It's what keeps you going when the road is long and the progress is slow. Vision keeps you focused on what is to come, rather than on what hasn't happened yet. Consider the story of the Israelites wandering in the desert for 40 years. God had promised them the land of Canaan, but they had to go through a season of wilderness before they could enter the promised land. That season was long, and it was filled with challenges, setbacks, and doubts. Yet throughout the entire journey, God continued to remind them of the vision of a land flowing with milk and honey, a place where they would thrive. Without that vision, they likely would have given up during the first sign of hardship. But the vision kept them moving forward, kept them believing, kept them fighting for the promise. This is the power of vision. It gives you the strength to endure, to keep going when everything inside you says to quit. It enables you to keep your eyes on the bigger picture, even when the immediate picture looks discouraging. Without vision, your faith becomes passive, and it becomes easy to let go of the promises you've been holding on to. But with vision, your faith becomes active. You begin to move forward, to act in accordance with what you believe God will do, even before you see the results. Faith that requires vision also means that you are willing to act in faith before the manifestation. It means stepping out even when you don't see the outcome yet. It's like Abraham preparing for the birth of Isaac, even though his wife was past childbearing age. It's like Moses stepping into the Red Sea with the faith that God would part the waters, even though there was no sign that the sea would open. Vision gives you the courage to take steps of faith, knowing that what you see in your heart is more real than what you see in the natural world. And this is where we need to align our actions with our faith. If we truly believe in the vision God has given us, our actions will reflect that belief. If God has promised healing, we will walk in faith as though we are already healed. If God has promised provision, we will act as though the provision is already here. Vision fuels our faith, and faith leads to action. The two are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. So as you stand on the edge of your breakthrough, I want to ask you, what do you see? Can you see with the eyes of faith the promise that God has spoken over your life? Do you have a vision that aligns with what God has said? Because faith is not just about believing in something you want. It's about seeing with clarity and conviction what God has already spoken. It's about knowing that what he has promised is already in motion, even if it hasn't yet fully manifested. Vision is the foundation that supports your faith, and with both you are unstoppable.